the first 10 to 15 years of anyone's career is actually so important and so foundational, right? And unfortunately, schools and colleges don't necessarily teach you the important life lessons that are required for for success.
This isn't about just being clever and winning the next quarter, winning the next year, getting the next promotion, right? How do you build sustainability?
You want the woman leader to become the best version of herself. You don't want that woman leader to become the best version of the older mentor.
One of the mistakes we've made, and we see a lot of, you spoke about folks who come out of campus, right? We're all in a way reserving our best for the next.
The best entrepreneurs are one which have a 24 by 7 obsession. All right. They feel like they have this problem in the world which nobody else has solved before.
When you create a learning plan for over a year's time frame, pick up one technical skill set and then add one behavioral skill or a softer skill.
What does one really do when they just can't click with their boss?
Shoot them. No.
Well, many years ago, W. Edwards Deming famously said, "Learning is not compulsory, neither is survival." This quote effectively explains the high mortality rate of companies in the digital age. More than 50% of the companies on the Fortune 500 list have actually disappeared from that list in the last 20 years, mainly because they didn't learn to adapt fast enough. Well, the same idea is true for young professionals at an individual level also. Well, to be relevant, intentional learning is the name of the game. Continuous learning is a superpower. After all, in today's context, machines are learning. The real question is, are you? Well, as you can tell, it is as much as about staying relevant as it is about retaining that edge for a long-term career marathon. Well, if this is something of your interest, then you're going to love this conversation. To dig deeper into the insight, I've had the privilege to sit down for a very transformative conversation with the awesome Vivek Gambhir and the very awesome Sunder Ramachandran, the brilliant minds behind the book Headstart, to decode how to thrive in your career, balance ambition and well-being, and build resilience for the future of work. Well, Vivek needs absolutely no introduction, my friends. He brings in 30 plus years of leadership experience across industries like consumer goods, technology, and consulting. As a former MD of Godrej Consumer Products and CEO of Boat Lifestyle, Vivek has built iconic brands and mentored countless young professionals. Sunder Ramachandran is a transformation leader with over 20 years of expertise in healthcare technology and financial services. As a senior VP at Dr. Reddy's Laboratories, Sunder has led global teams. You have to deep dive in this conversation to understand how to build your career to the next level. I don't think you're going to get this content anywhere. Absolutely valid to take your career to the next level. Let's deep dive and meet both the brilliant authors together. Hi Vivek, hi Sundar. Welcome to the PVT Show, where we have conversations that truly energize one's mind. And I am so excited that we are doing this podcast today. I think it took us some time to bring, and it took us some time to bring two authors together of this fantastic book that I have. Thank you, Sundar, for sending this book to us. So, Vivek, I'm sure you must be doing a lot of interviews. I sit with the authors myself, but for me, it is very, very pertinent and important to understand what happened. Like for startups, we have seed funding. For authors, we have something like a seed idea, an idea that was always in the back of the mind. And then one day you said, what happened between you two? That one day you said, okay, Sundar, come, we need to write this book. I think I'll start with that.
First of all, Poonam, thank you very much for having us. I think both of us are very big fans of your show. And a big thank you to the amazing work that you are doing. I think in the conversations we've had leading up to this recording also, your energy and your passion is so contagious.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for, I think, and I know you've talked about this being a work of passion for you. And thank you for all that you are doing to be able to nurture and bring out different perspectives of various individuals to your show. So please keep up the good work.
Oh, thank you so much. This really helps me and my team.
Thank you, sir. And look, any we were quite clear in the beginning, Poonam, that look, we didn't really want to make this just a book, right? There are lots of career books,
Yeah.
and Sundar and I have known each other for a few years, and then as we began talking about a year ago, we wanted to do something together, right? And as we began, talking, we realized that the first 10 to 15 years of anyone's career is actually so important and so foundational, right? And unfortunately, schools and colleges don't necessarily teach you the important life lessons that are required for for success. And we both went back to our early years of our careers. They were exciting, they were nerve wracking, full of lessons. Landing that first job, figuring out how to grow, and we stumbled along a lot along the way. We made so many mistakes, right? But what we recognized was that the first few years are the foundation for so many different things, for your habits, for your confidence, and for your perspective. And that's what really inspired us to get together and really, come up with Head Start. We've all, both of us, have really loved mentoring young professionals. We always find their energy and their curiosity, contagious. And as we got deeper, we saw a big gap in career advice. So much of advice today feels quite generic, it's not very actionable, and fairly disconnected from what people actually truly need. And then I have two kids who are in their 20s, and I've seen personally the unique challenges that young people face today. And I think that's what reinforced our belief that today's generation actually needs relatable, practical guidance to navigate this crucial stage. And that's really what Head Start became. It's our way of bridging that gap. We've tried to fill it up with real stories from young leaders, insights from very seasoned CEOs and entrepreneurs, and we've tried to pack it up with actionable steps. We call them Monday morning actions to help readers take charge immediately. But ultimately, I think what we've tried to do, Poonam, here is this is about energizing young professionals to build their own careers with their own definition of success, with confidence and clarity. The
True.
generation today is our future, and if we can even guide them a little bit later, little bit at one step at a time, we are shaping something better, for them and for all of us.
Very well said. I think I absolutely resonate with the thought process. Why the name Head Start?
Yeah, the Head Start is all about again the foundational years, right? It's about the in most cases the first start, which is the Head Start, really becomes the foundation for people to accelerate, and that's where the word Head Start comes from.
Very well placed. Sundar, what's your story?
No, I think, like Vivek said, the gap that we saw, Poonam, was if you look at the whole career advisory spectrum, right, there's a whole lot of, just apart from books, there's a whole lot of advisory that's available online. But as you dig deeper, a couple of things come through. I think one, how much of that advisory is coming from lived experience, right? How much of this is actually hyperbole, over dramatization, clickbaity type of stuff. And we thought, that's the pain point we want to address, right? Because we are in operational roles, coaching, mentoring people, building businesses, leading large teams. This is what we're doing on a day-to-day basis. So the context of seeing some of these career dilemmas play out is very real, right? It's very operational for us. We thought, there's an opportunity to bring that credibility, bring that lived experience to the table. And it's almost like if you're a young professional in the early phase of your career, it's almost like two senior people within your company literally mentoring you. When we think of the book in a phrase, it's almost like a coach in your hand, if you will, right? So someone who's sort of hand holding you in helping you make those important decisions that can set you up. And that was the whole idea, which is why both of us felt very passionate about codifying all the lessons we've learned and bringing those together in Head Start.
You have just said it so well. Because when I started reading this book, I realized you were talking to me, which is a very beautiful way of editing a book. A book could be very heavy, a book could be very preachy, a book could be very boring, and a book could be something like two senior folks talking to you, decoding and codifying the lessons of success. So I really loved reading it, though I haven't really finished. But every time I'm sitting, and I'm not trying to equate it to anything else, but since I have a little spiritual bent of mine, that is my natural liking, let me tell you something. There are people who would definitely come back and tell you that each time we read Bhagavad Gita, our situation is different, circumstances different, and thus, when we read whatever, whoever, whenever, they take out a perspective which is new, which is going to now apply on a thing which is happening in your life, and you wanted that mentoring to happen. I think the way you have put down your chapters, the way you have explained, the way you have plugged in not just your expertise, but expertise of several other CEOs, senior folks, and practically, it's a beautiful way of not using this book. And I'm using the word using. You don't read this book. You don't read such books. It is for keepsake. Whenever you have a dilemma, go back and see if that dilemma, and I believe you have covered all the dilemmas. So I am going to be decoding those, the most important ones in this podcast, in this conversation today. So let me begin by asking, Sundar, I'll again come back to you. I want to know your thoughts on why you call career a marathon and why you think a career is not a sprint. And the follow up to this would be, if it is a marathon, pros and cons. If it is a sprint, pros and cons. Over to you.
No, thank you. Actually, the whole the being a marathon runner, which is what you're referring to in the book, is actually something I'd credit to Vivek. I mean, that was his push to say, you got to think long term. And honestly, if it was just up to me, probably would have finished the book with section 5, which is be a go getter. And then Vivek obviously brought in that perspective to say, we're talking to young people, but it's also important to lay out, paint the landscape, because this isn't about just being clever and winning the next quarter, winning the next year, getting the next promotion, right? How do you build sustainability? Because the truth is, I mean, where we are, I work in the healthcare industry, chances are we're all going to live longer. And therefore, a natural outcome of that is we need to be professionally engaged as well, significantly longer than what probably the previous generations have done. Now, whether it's in the form of a conventional job or a portfolio career or what have you, but the idea is to say, how do you build rituals, work ethics, practices that serve you over a 30 to 40-year period? And that mindset is super important. I think it's also not something intuitive. When you are 25 and you've just started your career and someone like us comes and tells you, prepare for a 30-year journey. Obviously, it's not the most appealing idea at that point in time. But as you go further down, you look back, the possibility of you having done a lot of damage to yourself in early years is quite high. So I think if you're starting out and you know that you're going to play this long game, you can be a little more thoughtful about choices you're making. You can be kinder to yourself. You don't have to beat yourself on everything that goes wrong, because things will. There will always be a bad month. There will be a bad quarter. There could be a bad year. But the moment you start to think, put things into perspective and say, this is 1 year of a 40-year journey, I think it's easy to then digest. It's easy to sit with your bad days. And that's one of the key messages in the book as well, that we're all going to have some bad days. How do you sit with them? How do you, deal with yourself? What's the language you use for yourself when you're down? Because when the chips are up, everyone knows how to cope with themselves, right? But when the chips are down, how can you be kinder to yourself so that you can sort of bounce back and stay the course? And that's why we felt the marathon, narrative is super important. I'm really glad that we're ending it with that message for all the readers. In terms of the pros and cons, I think, like I said, the pro of the marathon is that, you don't have to get too clever about winning every segment of it. Because at the end of the day, the overall marathon is what matters. So you'll probably pace up and pace down depending on how you're feeling at a certain point in time. And then obviously within the marathon, there are obviously many milestones, right? So the piece that we're also trying to tell people is, yes, you got to have that mindset. Sometimes you may have to sprint because that's the need of the day. Maybe what you're doing necessitates that. But keep in mind that you got to also manage your energy. It's not just about winning every single sprint within that long marathon. It's about how can you keep your energy so that you are the last man or the last woman standing, when it
Mm.
eventually comes to the end of the journey. I think that's the perspective that we're trying to bring through the book, Poonam, if that helps.
And
Wonderful. Vivek,
what's
I'll come
great,
to you.
Poonam, in this chapter, in this section also is the final stories of Vinita Singh, the co-founder of Sugar Cosmetics. And Vinita is a very avid marathon runner in real life as well,
Yeah.
right? So in some ways, she's used the metaphor of a marathon, physical marathon run, in terms of her career as well, in terms of her learnings. And the importance of a marathon also is most successful marathon runners are also very driven by a strong sense of finishing the race, right? Because there are so many difficult moments in a race, right? So that sense of mission or a sense of purpose, I think, is also inherent towards trying to figure out how can you sustain something which will be a 40, 50 year kind of a journey, right? And the analogy also is an interesting one because there are so many uh, speed bumps
Hmm.
one encounters. The terrain actually gets very difficult in a marathon. Sometimes it's hilly, sometimes it suddenly gets windy one day. Sometimes it's a flat surface. So how do you keep on course correcting, adjusting your run to be able to pace yourself? I think is a very important thing, and so that's why for us this idea of figuring out how do you make life sustainable over a long period ultimately is the essence of what a thriving career is, right? Many people can win a race for 1 or 2 years.
Yeah.
Sustaining over 30 or 40 years, I think that's where true resilience and true fulfillment actually happens.
Very well said.
And can I
Just
just add, Poonam,
sure.
there, to all the young listeners, when you read the book, actually, Vivek shares a very moving and personal story just as we begin the marathon runner. And I'm not going to read the full story. I'll encourage
Please
folks
do
to read the
that.
book, but
Please
I'm
do
just going
that.
to read an excerpt out of that. And this is obviously, a personal story that Vivek has chosen to share in the book. And he says, my heart attack help me understand the fragility of our lives. This is
Yeah.
something Vivek had to go through, in his previous tenure. I switched my career and started making meaningful choices. Strangely, my heart attack was the best thing that happened to me. I'm no longer ticking boxes, but striving to make a real impact. I'm trying to live more intentionally while cherishing every moment with my loved ones. So I think that perspective of a senior leader actually sharing, sometimes we're chasing success, but we're not thoughtful about the price that we may end up paying. And I think, for folks who are obviously starting out, the sooner you recognize that taking care of yourself and having that energy, health to play the long game is as important as, the titles, the progress, the salary increments, and all the other financial rewards. The balance, I think, people would have so much fulfilling career versus just sort of, progressing in a linear fashion. So I think it's important. I just wanted to share that because that just sort of sums it up very well.
You made a very important point. In fact, I have thought of a complete section on it because the 70-hour work week debate and all it is on, which we will take up definitely. But Vivek, I want to come back to you, not really about the story, your own personal experience, but um, you have that life experience and corporate experience and business experience. So here I am actually speaking with somebody who's going to be putting all the lenses together and help me and the viewers of our show understand what is living intentionally really mean when you reflect back in your career and life.
No, I think, and one of the important thing is for each individual, the answer will change. And that's very important. While we share our perspectives, each individual can take inputs from as many sources as possible, from shows like yourselves, from books, from the Bhagavad Gita, as you mentioned, right? So people need to be able to actually take lots of different inputs, reflect again on what their goals and objectives in life are, what their definition of success is, and translate that into their own playbook. I think that's very important because if you start living your life based on, say, Sundar's playbook, it won't make sense. And same for Sundar, he can't, live his life based on your playbook. So to me, the important thing here is each individual's playbook actually has to be very unique.
Correct.
Over time, as we grow, we progress, our definition of success and fulfillment will keep on changing, right? Look, in the first 5 or 10 years, however hard we tell people, don't worry about compensation, don't worry about titles, those are important validations of markers, right? We've all been grown up. We have to get certain grades in life. The pressure
Yeah.
is there. Log kya kahenge, right? So
Yeah.
easy for us to say, don't worry about titles or money. But for someone who's starting off, those are important things to remember. Our objective is think about more things. While that's
Yeah.
important, please think about things that will set you for success the following 10 years as well, because at that level, those things may not be that relevant. So to me, intentionality has all been about trying to, first of all, be a lot more self aware about who am I as a person, what my strengths are, where are some of the areas where I need to course correct. For those strengths, can I find a way to make much more deliberate choices
Hmm.
to find fulfillment? Right now, fulfillment at this stage of my life is all about trying to make a difference. Can I actually try and amplify my impact and help a lot more people progress in their journeys? The answer was different, say 5 or 10 years ago. 15 years ago, the answer was I wanted to be a CEO of a company,
Yeah.
right? So I think the answer will keep on changing. But to me, intentionality is about, first of all, being more self aware, recognizing again what our strengths are, finding a way to deploy those strengths in the pursuit of whatever goals you have over the next few years, and being a little bit more clearer about the kind of choices you're making and the impact you are having. That's the essence of intentionality, I think.
I think you said it. Um, the way you explained it is also helped me to get the clarity that most, and please correct me if I have not understood it
Yeah,
properly, most professionals feel very overwhelmed. Though
yeah,
we have career stages, everyone's experience is diverse, as you said. And of course, different because no one person is going to be doing exactly, or there is no control we
yes,
in my and your life,
right,
right? Control C, control V is not going to happen. But then there are stages of career, as you also mentioned in your book, that most of the people will be put into a certain situation.
correct,
Say, for example, we have a situation in the campus
right,
when we are just out of the campuses or we are in the campus and thinking of our career. So we are talking about young professionals here. I wish I would have the liberty and the benefit of doing this conversation with you like 23 years ago. I would have charted a different pathway for my career. But anyone and whoever is watching going to be watching this podcast or picking up this book should have a takeaway that will reflect in their career and life, which is what the books are for. Because you and I are going to pop out from the world, but the
right,
legacy is going to be in this book remaining
right,
forever and forever.
right,
So, from campus to early career to early experiences, well, the end kind of decodes itself to say, and I want you to reflect on this, both of you, please. You say, be your best self at work. Honestly, I was not my best self. I was my bestest self because initial 10 years of my career, as you said, it was about compensation, jumping for compensation. Then the compensation was good for me, much above my requirement. Then I jumped for designations. And then after, I think, 15 years of my career, I thought all this is okay, done and dusted. Are you trying to say what is it that anybody should do, keeping these two, let's say Maslow's hierarchy? The basics should be done. Now, Wi Fi is a basic. So I think compensation designation is something which is always going to play up in our head. How do we put that new element of introspection that gives us more happiness while we are achieving it, not achieving it fast or delayed? But I'm trying to say that if we have that one more element to compensation and designation in young professionals' life, maybe their happiness index could go up
Yeah.
or balance out if they are having worries and miseries initially. Your thoughts on this, please?
Yeah. Sundar, do you want to take that on? Yeah.
Yeah, I think the whole idea of being your best self at work, Poonam, that really emerges from just being present, right? One of the mistakes we've made, and we see a lot of, you spoke about folks who come out of campus, right? We're all in a way reserving our best for the next, right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna really show who I am when I get that title, right? I'm going to bring on my strategic thinking when I become a manager, right? I'm going to show the company what a great leader I am when they make me a VP or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But the idea is, and the reality is, the behavior has to come first, and then everything else follows, right? So, whatever it is that you're doing, whatever role that you're currently in, whichever industry you are a part of, the question that you got to be asking yourself is, are you adding as much value as you potentially can to that particular job, whatever is the mandate that you've been given? Are you doing that to the best of your ability? Are you hitting the ball out of the park right now in the role that you're in? That is your uh, most guaranteed ticket to success.
Hmm.
Doing really well in what you've been asked to do right now almost is a door opener for other interesting things within that context in which you operate, right? So just sort of go all in, just make sure that you're double down on what it is that you've been asked to do it to the best of your ability, deliver value in the context you're in, and that just becomes a calling card for other things, right? I think that's what we're trying to recommend when we say be your best self at work. And then of course, we're sort of decomposing that by saying, what does that really mean? Because it can be a little esoteric, right? To say be your best self. And then we're
Yeah.
saying what that means is, be an agile learner. And then there are toolkits we're talking about in terms of how you can really, develop this learning mindset. You got to know how to build relationships with team members, because obviously you deliver results in the organizational context in a team environment. You got to know how to work well with your boss. So we have a section called Be a Boss Magnet. You got to have that ability to get stuff done. We
Yeah.
all get paid for executing results at the end of the day. So having that go-getters mindset, you got to know how to make career transitions. How do you move from function A to function B? How do you think about what is the right industry for you to sort of succeed in? And what is the consideration set when you make decisions around career transitions? That there's a section on that. And then, like we were discussing earlier, having the long term mindset of a marathon runner. So be your best self is a call to action to say, please ask yourself, are you bringing your best game
Hmm.
to the field today? And then the breakdown of that is these 6 sections that we have in the book.
I have a follow up question here, Sundar. Very well said. If this is the premise on which we are thinking about careers, so let me put it this way: is there a fundamental difference between a go-getter and a marathon runner, or are they same in today's context?
No, I think, one leads to the other, right? Because these are all interconnected. I mean, the idea of being a go getter is having that mindset of delivering results.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you could argue getting things done is almost a superpower, right? Um, in an organizational environment, in the context of a business, you'll always have some people who find the resources, who are resourceful enough just to make stuff happen, while others are wondering, how do they
How to
navigate,
do it?
right? So I think that's where the go-getters mindset to say, if it has to be done, it's up to me. I'm going to own this up. I'm going to find the people who I need to collaborate with. I'm going to find the resources that I need, and then go deliver the results, right? I think that mindset is super important. But while you're at it, you also have to remember that, there's no point in trying to be a one trick wonder,
Yeah.
right? This is not about just delivering results in a particular moment. You also need to build practices that allow you to do this consistently over a long period of time. So if you think about, leaders who've built long, meaningful careers, they are known for delivering results quarter on quarter, year on year. They've seen various cycles, and that mindset is equally important. So you have to be thoughtful to say you have enough fuel in the tank to last the journey. This isn't about just speeding up, finishing one task, and then you're asking yourself the question, you're huffing and puffing, and you're realizing you're done, right? You're burned out.
Yeah.
So you got to, while you're at it, you also have to have a sense of balance. Again, like Vivek said very well, at the start of your career, none of this is intuitive. So there's a little bit of trusting the process. There's a little bit of trusting the advisory of people, who've sort of gone through the journey themselves. And that's where mentoring, coaching, good advisory comes into play, right? Because it's not something that is that sort of surfaces up on your own in the early part of your career. So you need somebody to tell you that, and we're hoping to be those coaches that can give you that advice while you're at it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the book is doing that fantastic work. And of course, you're also there on social media. So if somebody wants to reach out and understand a part of your book, I'm sure you would be helping people out. I also happen to see something very interesting in the book, and I want you to reflect on that, please. What I loved about the whole thing, of course, it's like, telling why, who killed Katappa. So we won't do that. Having said that, for that, one should pick up the book to understand. Having said that, there's a beautiful thing that I read. And I think now I am wearing the hat of a leader on a team. Most of the times, when as a leader, I had a very tough career and I had to really do hard to make my career. And I see that I learnt it. And I'm using the word in first person because that's how people will be able to relate it better. For example, I have had my very tough, difficult, challenging run, and still I did, and still I'm here. I would know it is not easy. But what I saw when you, in your book, concluded the introduction, you said that go, do what you have to do it in this way. We are giving you some toolkits. We are also giving you some quotes. So if you apply those quotes, things are going to be easy. Tips, tricks, coaching, mentorship, plus experiences of other leaders. In the end, you say something which is fantastic, and I want you to tell everyone why that is fantastic. I may have had a difficult run in my career, which is not difficult from your perspective, from my perspective, because I didn't have mentors, or I had wished I had mentors of that caliber. So then you look for books, then you look for people around you, or then you look for something else, maybe. But the most important thing here is this: when I am a leader, I'm supposed to tell my people, go ahead, we are rooting for you. That's what you say. That's what you said in the book. That after giving all the toolkits, go ahead, chart out the plan, we are rooting for you. How important it is for leaders to be having this mindset. That whatever my learning has been, I'm going to give that learning to you to fast track your growth. And we are rooting for you. Your reflection on this, please.
Yeah, and Poonam, it's a fascinating question you're asking, and this is an issue I see with a lot of mentors who mentor women leaders such as yourself, and a lot of mentors who are older men, tend to be fairly ineffective as mentors to women because they tend to try and mold women the way they were, right?
Yeah.
And that's a big problem because you want the woman leader to become the best version of herself. You
Yes.
don't want that woman leader to become the best version of the older mentor, right? And so to me, the whole idea about leadership as a service, and if you truly believe that the role of leaders is to actually be, and I love the idea of servant leadership, right?
Yes.
Without followers, without people, you wouldn't have someone leading, right?
Yes.
And leadership is finite in some ways, right? At some point, if you think about legacy building, if you think about institution building, how you end up and how you create sustainable organizations, again in the marathon context, is about leaders being able to groom and nurture other leaders, right? And this is where the idea of rooting becomes, the idea of leaders eventually over time becoming the biggest cheerleaders. So honestly, for Sundar and I, the kind of gratification we get at this stage when we hear about one of our junior sales managers becoming a business unit head or a CEO is honestly far more than individual titles of success for us anymore, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and that's where the idea of rooting again comes about saying, look, we have your back. We don't have all the answers. We can provide you with a few suggestions, but go out there, make some mistakes,
Yeah.
but don't make the mistakes we made. Make your, as Sundar says this very well, please make your own mistakes, but please don't, make mistakes that we may have made. And that's the idea of the book, was to be able to at least let people know that there are some frameworks which probably can make life, in some ways easier. In
Yes.
some ways, there will be new unknowns that they will have to navigate. But let's at least provide them some ways for us to let assure them, look, we have their back, and people have our support.
I think this becomes the most important ask of leadership. That are you happy in rooting for people? And when you are, you will continue building followers for yourself. And that is not going to give you happiness. I think the followers are not. It's a huge responsibility, I believe, to have followers, because ultimately, whatever you are trying to tell them, it should create success for them.
Correct. Yeah. And
So from
Poonam, I'll tell you the analogy, which is may not be the most perfect analogy, is the parent-child analogy.
yeah.
The kind of joy parents feel through their children's success is way more than their own success also, right? Now, not every single employee can be a child, and the whole parent child relationship can be somewhat difficult in the leadership context. But the part of love, the part of pride, and the part of joy that I think, parents feel when their children become successful, to me, I think that's how leaders should also feel proud and successful when their team members actually end up doing even better than them. I still remember, when I was about a few years ago, my son is now 21, and I remember when he was 12 or 13, he began whipping my butt in tennis. Till then, I was really good. I could beat him. But I remember the day when he just really, whipped me, right? And I felt so happy
Yeah.
actually having lost to him, right? That I finally there was a certain pride I actually felt. But to me, that's the important part of leaders, is that when you start feeling like your team members are more capable than you, they can outshine you, they can do better than you. It's a very difficult one because all of us are very fragile egos. But if you can find a way to, feel that way, that's when true magic starts happening.
So very well said. I'm so excited about this. This brings me to a very pertinent question, and that is, in my own experience of coaching people and mentoring people in my own little world, I've had this question recurring a lot of times, and you have far greater experience, and I really want you to help me with this question. And the question is actually a reflection of a career of a young professional. Say, for example, I believe when kind of I think 2 decades ago, small successes used to give the marginal utility of happiness used to be very different. Now that definition has a bit changed. So I see professionals feeling they have achieved, and I'm talking about achievers, I'm talking about go-getters. They're achieving things, and immediately within 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, maximum 8 years, the moment they are about to hit a decade in their career, they feel they are stagnated. So please help in explaining and decoding how, in today's context, and I would like to pick the answer from both of you separately, how one should look and define a career success for themselves.
Sure.
Start with you.
Poonam, one of the
Yeah,
things
yes,
we
ma'am.
talk one of the things we talk about in the book is we have a framework called a three move plan, right? And the whole idea behind the three move plan is to wherever you are, can you be thoughtful and create three very deliberate moves that could span, let's say, a 3 to 5 year time frame? So at any point in time, you have something to look forward to, and what you're doing becomes sort of a vehicle that takes you there, right? So, you know, you could sort of philosophize, right? I think one of the philosophers who had said that at the end of the day, what is the secret to happiness? Something to do, someone to love, and something to look forward to, right?
Yeah.
So it sort of fits into that framing in a way. But the idea is to say you're not going to look too far ahead and then do this massive reflection at the end of the decade and come to the realization that, oh gosh, I'm stagnating or I'm plateauing in my career. The idea is to always have a 3 move plan to say, hey, what are my short, mid, long term goals? And over a 3 to 5 year period, because again, obviously things are changing, it's difficult to crystal ball and say what the outer 5, 7 years are going to look like. But having a plan, I think there's a significant value in just being deliberate, having a plan to say, what skill sets do I want to acquire over the next 12 to 18-month period? We also talk about the importance of having a learning plan as an example in the book,
Yes.
right? Which actually is a feeder into whatever is your career plan, because you're going to grow at the same pace as your skills. So if you're not accelerating in terms of how you're acquiring skills, it's a little naive to think that you're going to keep accelerating in terms of roles and responsibilities and seniority and so on and so forth. So the idea is to do these mini reflections. Idea is to break these 10-year journeys into shorter 3 move plans. Have something to look forward to. Be also pragmatic that maybe 100% of that is not going to pan out, but
Correct.
hey, if you put a plan together and even 70% of that comes through, you are giving yourself a phenomenal competitive edge compared to your consideration set. That itself is going to get you so much ahead than others, right? So I think just being thoughtful, taking it one step at a time, saying what is the next 12 months going to look like, what skills am I going to gain over this time frame, what could be my next landing role in a 24-month time frame. If you do these mini reflections, if you're doing a sense check, a
Yeah.
relevance check at shorter intervals, you give yourself a good chance of avoiding this trap of doing this massive reflection at a 10-year period and concluding that, look, I'm not moving in the right direction. You probably, this is almost equivalent of your boss telling you that you haven't really done well at the end of the year without giving you any signals through the course of the year, right? I mean, how disappointing that becomes, and we've all sort of gone through that, right? So the same logic applied to career planning works quite well.
Very beautifully explained, Sundar, I must say. And you are kind of preempting what I'm going to ask. I was just going to pick up from the book the story of Tejas, and he very nicely says towards, I think, second or third paragraph, if I remember correctly. He says that learning is not a diktat imprinted in the laws of the universe. I love this line. I hope he's going to be watching this. He just said it. So it's not a diktat. You want to grow, take charge. You want to feel good, take charge. If the career is not happening, invest in learning. Is there a roadmap? I think it is well covered in the book, but for us, for the benefit of the podcast, is there a roadmap you want to share with everyone right now with respect to learning?
Sundar, go ahead. Yeah.
When we talk about a learning plan, there are two ingredients we talk about, which is sort of akin to a roadmap, if you will, Poonam. One is we're saying, obviously, you're being paid for a particular operational, technical, functional skill set, right? So when you create a learning plan for over a year's time frame, pick up one technical skill set which could be obviously relevant to whatever it is, or whatever is your mandate within the context in which you're working on, right? This could be anything, right? Whether a technology skill or a functional skill or what have you. And then add one behavioral skill or a softer skill, right? Which could be, which usually tends to be slightly more long tailed in terms of acquisition of that skill, practicing it, getting comfortable with it, making it your own, right? So that functional skill combined with a life skill becomes part of your learning plan, right? And that's it, just two. We're actually recommending, with learning, less is more. So just have these two and commit to these two and make sure that you invest time and effort. I think that's one in terms of being thoughtful and having a plan. The other thing we're saying is the concept of a learning SIP, which hopefully
I
many young
loved it.
professionals will find useful, right? The
Yeah.
idea is to say, please put your money where your mouth is. To expect the organization, and you said take the wheels, to expect the organization to meet you all the way in terms of what your learning needs are or what floats your boat is a little non-realistic, right? So why don't you invest small amount of money, almost create a learning corpus for yourself,
Right.
and that then empowers you to go and chase your learning ambition with having no dependence on your HR team or your learning team or your boss. Whatever it is that they do becomes a bonus, becomes a plus plus. But you not only have the intent, You have the learning plan, which you've also funded yourself to go make it happen. So whether it is buying books, going and attending conferences, doing
Yeah.
an online course, taking executive education, finding a coach for yourself, self-funded. There's so many ways of cracking this. So take the wheels, have a plan, fund yourself, and the return on investment in literal terms on that asset class, which is learning, will outshine anything else, right? So there's value in being thoughtful about it, not just in the early stage, but I think throughout our careers.
I want to actually cement this thought in people's mind by asking you a follow-up question on this, that why learning is so much more important than what it was in the past. You beautifully mentioned about the industries in flux. Could you give some reflection on that, please?
Yeah, I think, look, I mean, just pick a sector, right?
Yeah.
And you're seeing what's changing. I mean, the business models are changing. The way we go to customers are changing. The way we think about markets are changing. The way we think about competition is changing, right? And this is, in a way, sort of agnostic of what industry, what role you may be in. So, given that, it's obviously cliched to say the pace of change is accelerated. What
Yeah.
you know for sure is this is going to be evolving as you go along. So your ability to keep your eyes and ears open, and learning is basically just that, right? Your ability to absorb what's going on in the environment. What does it mean for your business? What does it mean for your role? How is it going to evolve over the next 1 to 2 years? And therefore, how do you need to evolve to meet all those changes halfway? So you have a way to add value in that mix. I think that's the key question that we all have to be asking, right? Uh, I mean, if you just look at, I mean, I work in the healthcare sector, and if you just look at how healthcare gets diagnosed, how it gets delivered, how it gets packaged, just as general consumers and patients, I mean, so much has evolved over the last 10 years, right? So if you're not
Correct.
sort of keeping track of that, you obviously, not just you, your business, the function that you're in, can very easily fall into the zone of irrelevance, right?
I agree.
I think that's the key piece. If you want to stay competitive, if you want to make sure that you're still winning while all of these things are evolving, you need to evolve at the right pace. One of the leaders we've quoted in a book is a gentleman called Rajiv, who runs this very popular company called Nolscape, Rajiv
Yeah.
Jayaraman. And he uses a very interesting phrase that I think sums it up quite well. He says, in the environment we're in today, machines are learning. The real question is, are you?
Are you? You won't believe. I have used that in my introduction. It's so It's so empowering and it's so powerful. You're going and training the machines. Are human beings also thinking on the same line? So let's. I okay. Sundar and Vivek, any personal anecdote from your career that it will be very interesting to hear it from, from the horse's mouth. Let me say, any incidents that you remember, which is like you want people to know. Both of you, please. Vivek, we'll start with you.
In what context, Poonam?
In your career, any story, fantastic story. If you can tell me something which is not in the book, that will be more awesome. But if it is already in the book, still it is awesome.
Well, there are so many stories about our learning journeys, I think, in the book. There are stories about our experiences in terms of dealing with, both good and difficult bosses. All right.
I want one story right now.
So I can't think of anything right now. Sundar, do you have a good story in mind?
Well, let me tell you a story that's not in the book,
Yeah.
Wow.
but
Okay.
a story and sort of a lesson we talk about, right? I think, this was about when people make transitions.
Hmm.
So I made a transition from a functional leadership role into a business leadership role a few years back in a different enterprise context. And as it happens with a lot of young leaders, mid-stage leaders, this whole need to prove yourself, this whole need to tell others how smart you are. You go in with that intent. You're over-indexed on know-how. You're over-indexed on proving to others why the company made the right decision by sending you, parachuting you into that particular job.
Yeah.
And the story is basically, I spent about a quarter doing this,
Uh-huh.
flagging my ego, showing my smarts, and obviously it didn't turn out well at all, right? While I thought this is going to help me build credibility, it actually just took me back, right? And then I had to spend the next 1 year rebuilding, listening, understanding, telling people what I don't know, uh, telling people to step up and fill in the gaps, right? Really getting that whole team cohesion going. So, really sort of the lesson there is sometimes I think, especially when we're starting out and we're in mid stages, we can be too self consumed. We can get in our own head and
Yeah.
think that this game is about us, uh, only to make those mistakes and learn. I mean, the collective is what we're really going after. It really, I mean, beyond a point, how smart you are, how brilliant you are is really a non issue. Neither are people interested in learning all that. I think people want to know, where do I fit in? What's my role in this mix? And what's your job as a boss or a leader in bringing my best to the table? So I learned it the hard way, and I wish if people obviously learn it sooner, they'll get so much more better outcomes.
Thank you so much for this vulnerability. And that is what is also a very important skill of all leaders. Because honestly, I also used to feel that I always have to. And for women, Vivek, you said it is so much more difficult because the moment, in fact, I remember one incident where for a change, I said, for a very, very long part of my career, I was trained not to show emotions. And then I said, oh, emotional intelligence is such a big skill. So I would always show my emotions to my team. But the moment we go in a pack, as a team, and then we are facing other team members, we are like, just that's how we do. And then there was a time, which is also a reflection to what you said, Sundar, that it is also about, you experiencing things and then you understanding that no, emotions are very, very important to be discussed. And not really the emotions of so there was a one line which was said, oh, women are touchy, because women can express, women can say that no, this is not good, this is good, or this is bad. For a very long time I did not do that. And the moment this change over in my own self happened, that I started expressing, there was a great reception from people. This skill I never knew about. I always thought I will be judged because I'm a woman leader if I'm not that expressive and if I'm not putting my emotions out. And I always thought that people will, oh, women are very touchy. You should not say anything. Men are very bold. And I'm talking to two leaders in front of me. But this is the reality. Is there anything, any advice, any coaching live that you can do, Vivek? Because I know so many women, I would never come across as a vulnerable woman, but still, these are my, you know, inner fears when I am in a leadership role. So there could be so many women who would, at the surface level, think that they are very bold, but there is always a bomb ticking inside of us. I want you to help us out.
No, and Poonam, you strike me as someone who's so authentic, right? And so, um, was there a particular trigger or something which happened which made you transform this way?
So many triggers. Because by the grace of God, I happened to start my journey of senior leadership role at a very, I would say it happened a little faster for me, by the virtue of doing good work, right? But then, when you start sitting in the management team a little early, you know that you are the only woman sitting in the board or in the management team. There are so many other things that are to be also looked at, which I never looked at. I never had a filter. I always knew, काम करो, अच्छा काम करो, आगे बढ़ो. It really worked in the initial phase of my career. I would say up to 12 to 15 years. This, as you said, Sundar, give your 100%. You should feel good when you're coming back home that I gave my 100%, I gave my 200%. That used to give that happiness. But then a time comes when you are actually stepping into real leadership roles, that you have to build your mindset to a very, very different level. You have to be very, very equated with emotional intelligence. You have to keep changing yourself with the teams you are moving in, with the requirement. So, my question to you is, What is the advice that you have for women leaders, or young professionals who are starting out?
And there are two elements to it. One is obviously the organizational element, which is the responsibility of the organization to be able to create an environment which actually is a psychologically safe environment, right?
True.
The second is to be able to strive to create an environment where the playing field over time gets more and more level, right? And there's a certain amount of equity and fairness that's built in, particularly in terms of both the ways of working, the culture, and
Yeah.
even things like policies and even things like promotions, right? I think those are all important things which organizations have to ensure that there's actually a level playing field, right? The third element, and I'll talk about the individual after that, is the traditional definition of leadership is a very male centric leadership. It comes from
Agree.
old hunter days, right? And
Yeah.
which is why it led to the whole, and it led to the industrial revolution and the 9 to 5 kind of a job. And the world wasn't geared towards, in those days, geared towards women, working women having careers, balancing work and life. And the model of leadership was very, very different. It didn't accommodate for people taking breaks, taking sabbaticals,
Yes.
working part time. So, and I think over time, people have recognized the huge capabilities. And COVID was a big wake up call, because if you look at
Yes.
the performance of women leaders or organizations which were run by women versus run by men, women run organizations did far better coming out of COVID than organizations run by men. So the entire approach towards a more empathetic, communicative
Yeah.
style of leadership, the entire model of leadership, I think Poonam is now changing quite a bit, and its onus is all of us to be able to say there isn't just one model of leadership,
Yeah.
right? There are actually multiple models of leadership. The models depend again on the context of the situation,
Right.
right? And in many situations, the kind of skill sets that women tend to be better at versus men might be more suitable than the traditional model of leadership. Now, having said that, the challenges that women are facing today are still quite enormous, because while the world is changing, it's still not changing as quickly as it we would like to. I think it'll take us 70 to 80 years before we have equal number of women CEOs and male CEOs. I think that's
True.
the practical reality, right? So I think what women can do is, first of all, find ways to be able to build more confidence in themselves. If you look at things like
Yeah.
imposter syndrome affects women far more than it does men today. So, one is for women to have greater conviction, greater confidence, greater self belief. Second is for women to find their own networks as well, right? Women need to find their own tribes, to create their own support networks where they can start helping each other. Honestly, I don't see that much happening today. I don't
Right.
see too many women going out of their way to help, other women. And I really encourage women leaders to say, please, if you're mentoring, 10 people, let 8 of them be actually women, right? So I think
True.
you just have to be able to do that. So to me, that's the second, second big, the second big thing. The third is, at some point you have to demand a seat at the table,
Mm.
right? I think just being willing to accept the status quo is not enough. I think women have to stand up. They have to speak louder. It's okay if someone says, "Hey, why are you being so assertive?" And it's okay for you to be touchy and expressive also. So if you feel like crying, go ahead and cry in a meeting. I think it just one has to be able to start making change happen by letting people know this is actually an acceptable way of operating. I don't think women should hide behind their feelings, because ultimately these are actually you have to be authentic, and you have to then find a way to bring your authentic self to work. And I think those are some of the few areas in which I think women can also do things differently, to make sure that they are getting their due share of what is actually what they deserve, I think, here, Poonam.
And Poonam, I
I
just wanted to add a quick story there that sort
sure.
of again highlights this, right? This is a lesson I learned from a woman leader on my team. And like I said, the context here is I was a new leader, and working for a large global organization, and a lot of global organizations have these multi-country women leadership initiatives. It's almost sort of fashionable to do this, right?
Right.
Um, and I wanted to show what an inclusive leader I am. So I
Okay.
obviously had multiple women on my leadership team enroll in that program. These are all senior women, the HR director, the finance director, the quality director, they all happen to be women. And I mentored and coached the hell out of them. I was very available, always asking questions, mentoring them, going out of my way. And then I did a debrief. This was a 3-month program. And then my HR director, Nirupa, she's now the HR director at Coca Cola. I asked her feedback. I said, Nirupa, how do I do? And I was expecting her to give me a great review saying, Sundar, wow, what a leader you were, and this and that, and make me feel good. And she said this, and I quote it. She said, you coached the hell out of us, but we are overcoached and under sponsored.
Oh,
Okay.
oh my
And that,
gosh, she
and
just
that
said
was
it.
she said it, right?
She said
And
it.
I assumed that what they need from me is my coaching and advisory. What they really wanted me to be was a door opener.
Yes.
And she taught me that lesson that look, the biggest thing you can do for us is when you get on regional calls, when you speak to bosses in London, talk about us, bring those roles to our table, go and actively recommend us for those roles. That's where you will make a difference. We don't need as much advice as you think we do. So one of the things I do now is I don't, I mean, obviously, I still have a lot of women on my team. I don't go with the assumption that I'm going to teach you something and I'm going to make you better. I actually ask now to say, look, what is it that you need? Maybe and I find that most of them are already smart.
Yes.
All that they need is a little bit of matchmaking, finding
Correct.
the right job, opening the right door, helping them land in the right position. I think that's the sort of support that they need more often versus just pure play coaching and mentoring. So that's a mistake I made. So that's my advice to men. Uh, don't assume that they need a coach. Maybe they just need a sponsor, right? So that'll be that.
Thank you so much for saying this. This is going to be the highlight of the podcast because this is going to be, we always, every year, there is a Women's Day and we want to do so many things, but then this is what is, you just said it, what needs to be done.
No, I think
We,
you said it so well. I think
yeah,
the it's so much more important for male leaders to be sponsors and advocates than mentors and coaches. I think, uh, and this is maybe generalizing.
perfect.
I think women, women, if you're looking for a mentor, I think a women mentor might be more effective than a male mentor. I think the role male leaders can play is far more to be sponsors and advocates, I think.
So wonderfully put. Thank you so much. Thanks to both of you. I am feeling so honored to be sitting with you and discussing. I hope even if one or two leaders would listen and possibly have this thought process when they are trying to, build teams, this is going to be so much fundamentally correct for the women who really want to achieve something in their career and are very honest about it. So thank you for saying this. I want to now bring our conversation to I also love this beautiful concept in the book of 2 by 2 push and pull matrix because we all heard about the great resignation period. We all heard about the digital, the talent going haywire, talent revamp, and stuff like that. So, for what is it, how this model can, what is this model, first of all, in a nutshell? The call to action here is that if you really want to grasp the whole thing, pick up the book, but in a nutshell. And how before resignation the mind has to be.
Yeah. I think Poonam, the typically there are two separate decisions. There is a decision about whether you want to leave an organization. There's a separate decision about whether you want to join an organization,
Yeah.
right? And normally we tend to mix both of these things together because if we are not liking something, we'll start looking for some job. And the minute we find this new job, then we quit, this job, right? But it's so important to separate out the reasons why you may want to leave something and then deciding what you want to pursue next. And this is where the push and pull matrix becomes very important, right? It's critical for people to, first of all, keep on assessing what they like about the current job, what keeps them going. Are they getting the roles, the progression, the rewards, the kind of bosses that they want to work with, and what keeps them going in a particular job? And if, and we have a, a few suggestions in this section about, if you don't feel excited about coming to work, say 3 days a week, or if for 6 months you feel like a job is in a rut, perhaps it's time to be able to look, somewhere, somewhere else. And then I think if you're starting a particular job, look, the grass always feels greener on the other side, right? It's a very natural thing that we always feel like, look, something better is always out there. And sometimes switching too quickly or switching too often is either framed as ambition or a cure for boredom. I'm pretty bored if I want to do something else. But sometimes moving too quickly can prevent you from building depth, from building credibility. And look, all employers notice when your resume is full of very brief service level roles, right? And so part of the push pull matrix is to be again very clear about, what keeps you going, what is great about the current job that you are doing.
Yeah.
And if you want to leave, what are the reasons that you want to leave, and what do you want to leave for, and what does the other job, other role give you, which this current role does not give you. So it's a far more systematic way of trying to put this into a much more cohesive framework to be able to determine if, when, and how to look for your next opportunity.
True. Sometimes I've also seen, because there are two, three people leaving from a team for
Yeah.
their own good reasons, then everybody wants to leave.
Right.
Sundar, you want to reflect on this? Because this actually goes on to damage CVs and your experiential level also.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the whole push and pull is really about giving a framework, right? Trying to be as
Yeah.
objective, because sometimes the decisions to leave are emotional. I mean, let's be realistic. Sometimes things don't work out and you feel like this is not the right environment. How do you, try, to make it very objective is the whole idea. And then the two by two is to say, what about your current environment is actually working for you? Right? Are you sort of under indexing on all the great things that you have going for you in the current environment and just getting attracted to whatever is a new offer? So just trying to be more objective. But on a lighter note, Poonam, I just want to read
Mhm.
out something from the book. So one of my mentors, Ronald Sequeira, we've quoted this in the introduction of the career transition section where we talk about 2 by 2. He was executive director at GSK, used to be on the board, and he gave me this advice, and I really, he said,
Yeah.
at any point in time, someone is leaving a company and someone else is joining the same company.
True.
Both of them think they're doing the best thing possible. There's no right or wrong when it comes to career choices. It finally boils down to finding what feels right at a particular point in time. So yes, there's objectivity, but at the end of the day, it's really a matter of perspective, because the company you think isn't working for you is obviously working very.
Very well said. Absolutely. And this is such a good reflection on where if you're leaving, then somebody else is aspiring for that same place. So you might as well wear a very interesting, maybe you can use the same framework of pull and push matrix and then possibly decide more. I would say it is going to be a more informed decision for people instead of just, because everybody is leaving, I should also leave and, try to update my LinkedIn profile that, hey, I'm in a new role. So, this brings me to now a very important question, which is very, very important from what's happening around the world. In the book, also, you very beautifully mentioned that entrepreneurship is not tied down by a clock. There's no this being an entrepreneur. Vivek, you are consulting so many startups, so many entrepreneurs. I think I would want you to help me understand this better and reflect on this. A lot of people who are right now in jobs, they want to be entrepreneurs and start their startups because they fancy it. People in the jobs, they feel they are overworked because somewhere to grow, you got to be putting in more than 70 hours a week. What are your thoughts on this?
No, what's amazing is the amount of opportunities available for entrepreneurs today. I think, um, the kind of funding that's available, the kind of ecosystem that's available, because most entrepreneurs need need that ecosystem to be able to create new ventures. But today, it's actually considered to be a cool thing to do,
Yeah.
thanks to shows like Shark Tank. For someone to actually be an entrepreneur. Uh, Having said that, though, Poonam, I think the whole approach, let's sit down together and figure out what new business to launch and then find a whiteboard and come up with something. Honestly, those are fraught with failures, right? uh, The best entrepreneurs are one which have a 24 by 7 obsession. All right, they feel like they have this problem in the world which nobody else has solved before. And I call it in Hindi dimag ka keeda, right? You have this thing which you can't sleep because you're
Yeah.
so obsessed about trying to solve that particular issue. I think that sense of mission and purpose is actually very important. The second is the intensity it takes,
Hmm.
and it's not a get rich quickly scheme, right? It can be 5, 10, 15 years of one's life, 7 days of working,
Yeah.
10, 15 hours a day, and you have to enjoy it also, and love what you are, love you're doing. A lot of people try and pursue this as a side hobby, and they start chasing valuations.
Hmm.
And I always keep on saying, please think about value, not about valuations. Valuations will come if you create the right level of value. So
Correct.
I don't think it's for everyone. It's a very lonely pursuit, as well. So for people, who are in it, I think they need to be in it for the right reasons. Obviously, the kind of independence one gets,
Yeah.
the ability you get to be able to kind of create something new, that's the amazing thing about entrepreneurialism. But I think I always caution people and saying, do it for the right reasons. If you're clear about why you want to do it, and if you're prepared to deal with the inherent sacrifices required, it can be one of the most gratifying things
Right.
in one's life.
True. I completely agree with this. Sundar, I want to roll back to you with a very important question that people are going to love if you are able to answer this particular question for them. And please be honest, because I can see that you're giving some very fantastic stories. So I'm just hoping that I'll get another story out of you now. My question is, though you have a full chapter dedicated to this, that what does one really do when they just can't click with their boss? Pro tip from Sundar.
Shoot them. No.
I wish.
Well, look, I think there's
Yeah.
no secret sauce, but I think it's not such a mystery as well, right? I think first thing is bosses are human beings, right? Which is what we say in the book. So you got to start by just building a foundational view of who they are as people. I mean, I think the question that you can ask is, how do you build a relationship, right? How do you build a new relationship? You invest, you try to find out more about the individual, you understand, what sort of what's usually their tone and temper, and what gets them going, what makes them tick. The same is true, even in the boss relationship as well, right? You have to figure out, what type of an individual you're working for. I think that's one. The
Yeah.
second is, at the end of the day, your boss has a mandate, right? So if you can figure out what is it that your boss is responsible for, and sort of actually be an catalyst, right? Help them deliver their agenda. Automatically, you will be a close confidant, right? So I think the trick that people miss out is not being able to understand what creates value for the boss, right? And when you don't do that, for the lack of that
Yeah.
know-how, you then start indexing on artificial behaviors, right? Psychophancy as an example, and that's, you start sucking up. That's not what this is all about. It's about figuring out who this is as a person. That's number one. But also being very thoughtful and saying what will create value for the individual, and then doubling down on that, providing feedback to the boss, asking for feedback from the boss, and then really building that strong relationship, right? And not getting too worried. Often within the corporate circles, right, you keep hearing this narrative to say, if you try to do all of that, people will come and say, hey, you're trying to be the boss's favorite. uh, I think it's great to be the boss's favorite. It actually gives you a competitive advantage. As
Yeah.
long as you're building that currency by doing the right things, I think it's the right way to go. Having said that, it's a relationship between two individuals. There are times that, with the best of your intent, this is not working out. And again,
Correct.
I don't think anything is more important than maintaining self respect and dignity. So if you feel that is coming in the way, and if that fundamentals are being compromised, then of course I think the right thing to do is to see if one of you can outlast each other. And if that's not possible, then maybe find a new boss or find a new organization, right?
Yeah.
But I think
That's also the beauty of being in a job. You can decide, right?
Exactly.
If
And
you have your
Poonam,
own startup or business, it is so difficult.
correct. Poonam, the only other thing I would add is, at least as a reflective of my career, and during the times when I had difficult situations with bosses, honestly, it was less about the boss; it was much more about me,
Hmm.
right? So we usually tend to externalize the situation and end up blaming the boss for a difficult situation and adopting a victim mindset.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to look at the mirror as well and figure out what are some things that I could be doing differently, perhaps, and perhaps did I do something which made the situation worse? Can I take some corrective measures?
Right.
So I think the onus should be on people to be honest with themselves. First, try and see if you can fix yourself, right? Fixing a boss is very, very difficult, right? The nature of the hierarchy makes it very difficult. I think the important thing is to try and see if one can make some changes to improve the situation. You can try and give some feedback to the boss, and as Sundar was saying, try in spite of your best efforts. If things don't work out, sometimes a graceful exit is not bad at all.
True. True. And I think people who want to understand how to be a boss magnet, then the book helps them do that. There's a full chapter dedicated to that. One very important thing which I have seen happening, and I really want you to help people with this, is that we are anybody, not just a corporate career or a let's say, how is my personal life, how is my health life, how is my well-being, how is my career. We are nothing but summation of the people we try to spend time with, because that is constantly influencing us at the subconscious level. You also mentioned in the book very beautifully about good friends and bad friends. Let's not say bad friends, but then who are good for you and who are not very good for you. I want you to give little reflection on this very important point, which I have never seen anybody decoding for the young professionals.
I think, look, one of the biggest assets that we have in our life is our own time,
Yeah.
and how we decide to deploy that time. That's the biggest, if you look at various sources of capital, right? The one capital which we all have is our own time. And so I think it's extremely important for us to be far more thoughtful and deliberate about where and how we spend our time, and where and how we derive energy,
Yeah.
right? And so over time, as one gets older, we realize that we want to deploy our energy and time in things that actually are much more positive in some ways. And it's important to be able to weed out the negativity in life.
Right.
So I think the idea of focus, the idea of, I think, prioritization is inherent to, I think, this whole idea of friendship as well. And within friendships, there might be multiple circles, right? There are what we call some, great friends, but there are also what we call useless friends in the book.
Let's
And sometimes
decode.
useless friends become very important because as leaders get more senior,
Yeah.
as Sundar was mentioning, you get surrounded by psychopaths, right? You start hearing your own voice,
Yeah.
and you just find yourself around people who want to just, tell you what you want to hear. So sometimes you also want friends who will actually be extremely honest, where there's no agenda, where you can actually have a conversation without being judged, where you can be vulnerable, and where someone is not actually looking for something from you. So
Yes.
I think over time, having those agenda-less conversations, which are those useless friends, actually becomes a very important way, Poonam, of being able to refuel yourself. So a lot of this,
Sometimes,
in terms of, is all
yes.
about actually more figuring out ways in which you can get feedback, you can drive energy, and you can make better choices in life.
You just said it. I have a question here. Is it good, ugly, bad, or great to be sharing your corporate life with your friends?
I think it's important to have a multidimensional life, right?
Hmm.
If your entire identity becomes, right, your corporate life, then perhaps it's not a life fully lived. So I think to that extent, it's so important. And we talk about the importance of cultivating hobbies in the book. Part of nurturing your best self or your better self is being able to actually explore various facets of your personality.
Sure.
So I think our corporate lives are a very important part of who we are. So it's important to be able to share those with friends, with spouses and partners. But if that becomes the only thing,
Hmm.
then that feels very boring and one dimensional, Poonam.
I was just coming to the same point that how does really, what would be as a ending note, ending question, or a wrap up question? What would be your advice individually for balancing ambition and well being, which is the most important thing anybody would want to know?
Yeah. Sundar, you want to go it first?
Yeah, I think the environment, and this is me giving myself advice more than me giving advice to anybody else. I think just don't take yourself too seriously. None of us are as important as we think we are. So I think
I think you wrapped it up so beautifully. Yes, Vivek, please.
No, I think the part which we realize after after many years of working is that, look, careers aren't necessarily a straight line, right?
Yeah.
It's more like a winding road. You'll have some unexpected turns, you'll have some detours, you'll have some bumps, right? The key is to actually stay very open, be curious, and not be afraid to take a different route
Yeah.
when things don't go planned. And real success isn't really about following somebody else's playbook. I think it's about writing your own story, one chapter at a time. So it's so important for every single of our readers to give yourself permission to explore, pivot, and really define what success actually looks for you.
You said it. Thank you so much for giving this advice. I want to wrap up this amazing conversation. I actually want to go on for another 2 hours, but in the interest of time, because, we can't be telling people everything in just one podcast. For the rest of it, I think this book is something that Vivek and Sundar, this would be my very personal as a reader advice to you. I don't think this knowledge is there in any MBA institute. You must definitely speak to top B schools or all B schools to have something like this in the last semester of their MBA curriculum. For management students, this is something which is a gold mine, I would say. And for me also, after such a long career where I started reading this and when I started reading what other experts have written, how you have decoded all of that, it made so much of sense. It started giving me mentally so many reflections. And especially if you're a leader, this is going to help you become a better leader because you're going to be adopting and handpicking a little bit of Vivek into your head and a little bit of Sundar into your head, and possibly looking at your profiles, becoming a mini version of both of you. What else can one ask for? So, I also see in the book there is a 90-day Head Start challenge that you have given. Sundar, would you want to give the challenge to everyone today through this podcast?
no, it's fairly straightforward. I mean,
Yeah.
we're finishing every section in the book with what we call Monday morning actions, and we're telling people, hey, you know what? Just pick up a couple of those actions every week. See how you can deliver. find an accountability partner, a friend who you can share your progress on these challenges with. And then, of course, the whole idea of Head Start is not just to limit it to yourself, but also can you give some other people a head
Yes.
start. So in that spirit, gift the book to people that you care for, friends who you want to see succeeding as well. So really sort of don't limit the know-how to yourself, spread it out, and in that process you become better, and the friends that you interact with, the peers that you interact with, they become better as well. So that's what the challenge is all about.
Thank you so much. Your parting lines, Vivek, for everyone.
No, I think just do what you can to figure out what your head start will be in 2025.
Yay, perfect. That's the perfect head start to a brand new year. And I hope people pick up this book. People, young professionals, people who really want to be leaders, read this book. I'm also going to be reading it like whenever, and I'm going to be reading every single page of it. It's so beautifully written. Thank you so much for your time. I can't be more honored than having both the authors together for this podcast. Thank you, Vivek. Thank you, Sundar.
So much, Paul. Thank you.